first things before I talk, I would like to do something that we do in Spain in some working groups. That is, please stand up and hold the person that you have here. This is something that we do. We need to be in contact. Yes, one to each other. Yes. We have to break. Come. Yes, good. That is good. This is some dynamics that we do in Spain. This the last year when we occupied the squares. What we are doing right now is organizing our life in the way that we want to do. But it's very difficult, of course. It's very difficult because in the meantime we have to eat. In the meantime we have to live in this system, and this is the double work. We consider, or I consider, that there is 4 steps, like stairs, that we have to overload. The first one, that the very basic, is the police. They are the dogs of the system, but we use the strategy of non-violence with them. Why? Because when you have a child, you, in the education of your child, you teach your child that they have to get everything without violence. Then we have the media. The media is the voice of the power. They are already sold to the power. So what we are doing is creating our own media and hacking the media that are in Spain. We create topics on social networks. We discuss. We talk directly to them. Then is the political class. We have a political class that they don't represent us because they are living their own world. They are taking their own decisions. And the first one step is the financial sector. That is people that they have a greed. They cannot end of their greed. They want always more, and we are paying for this greed right now. What I think is what we are living, I say before, what we are living is the end of the political class, the end of the representative democracy, and we are starting, in my opinion, the beginning of the participative democracy. We are the sons of the artisanal fathers, mothers, and we are going to be the fathers of technological children. It means we are in the middle of something that is going to overload us. So I have no solutions, I have tools.
I'm part of ESC. ESC is a social center based in Rome. It's a place that is occupied since 8 years ago. In Italy there is a lot of spaces like that, like social centers, where people run social activity basically. In our social center we run a free metropolitan university that is free for people that we doing common research together. When Indignato started 1 year ago, this Occupy movement that takes place everywhere, it takes place also in Italy, but in a very different way, because in Italy people start to occupy theaters, occupy cinema, occupy different cultural places, and they try to run in a different way that places.
When we are comparing it to the Western situation, it's really very hard even to compare, because what we have in Ukraine, that or even what we don't have really in Ukraine, that we don't have any stable, reflexive public background that would serve as a stable basis for any activity. When you do something, especially politically engaged, that the context is against you, especially when you are openly and publicly left. What we are trying to do is to conduct politics, and I think it's maybe the most appropriate and the most adequate for the Ukrainian context way to do politics, I mean grassroots politics, by the means of art and knowledge. That's why somehow our, like a slogan, like a theory, and like a vivid practice, we have this art, knowledge, politics principle or perspective. It means, as a final result, to create some platform, some common basis for different politically engaged groups that share common views, to have some kind of a fighting community that would survive and could continue the activity. Without these social ties that were erased and demolished by today's neo-capitalist order, we cannot do nothing together. So this kind of fighting community, let's say metaphorically, which is based on solidarity values, I think that is what we are trying to create and to manage to have in Ukraine.
I came here to talk to you, and to you, and to you, and to you, not to the politicians. If you want to stop the change, start to talk about elections. If you want to stop the revolution, start to talk about politics, parliaments, and all this stuff. One thing is the power and our organization, how we can do in life things, and another thing is what this representative of the politics do. I think we have to overload the idea that the parliaments are going to represent all the ideas that are here.
So why we or they cannot here organize something like that you have in Madrid? There are clear political and social reasons for that, why it is impossible, and just without understanding that, without analyzing that, it's impossible. You are just then playing the role of a solipsist, you know, that it's everything about parliament. It's not everything about parliament, it's a very grassroots problem. That this kind of social glue, social ties, even in Łódź, you can hear, there is a very huge and very powerful football hooligan right scene, which is absolutely very powerful on the streets from the 90s. We talked before the discussion about that. So it is also a kind of a reason why this glue, these social ties cannot be elaborated in the cooperatives, in the different platforms, in Occupy, in other spheres. Because this kind of solidarity interaction is now used by other forces.
This year it was a month ago in Madrid in the Congress. They were discussing the budget, no? The general budget for the next year. And outside the people organize demonstration, and then they sit in assembly and they start to talk about budget. The two places were separated by maybe 250 meters, and the conversations in the two places were totally different. What the need of the people respect budget and the conversation inside the parliament about the budget were two different worlds, completely different. And it was very aesthetic also to see how the parliament was empty and the street was full. This is how can we start the end of the representative democracy and start to construct the participative democracy. When we participate not in the decisions because they don't allow us to take decisions, but we can participate in the subjects, in the topics, in the conversation that they are trying to talk. You will see how different thinks the people from the politicians, and this is the end of the political class.
Yes, but I don't see what's next. How that would be translated into concrete action which would change things.
There are different stages in revolution.
Absolutely.
The first stage, I think, is to form and to inform the people.
Make the first step, which is to inform and to organize and just stay there. And the longer you stay there, the more the people will lose their enthusiasm. Because they say, well, we've been campaigning, we've been protesting, we've been occupying, nothing has changed, apparently it doesn't work. Let's go home. The transitional period is very tricky to know how do you come from the period when you just create an agenda to the point where you act what you've preached before. And I think that to write off parliamentary democracy and representative democracy that easily would be a grave mistake. Because then a lot of the people who don't go to protests, who are dissatisfied but they're not vocal about it, they will say, well, the far right, I don't know if they're right or wrong, but at least they have a program. And they have a political party, I can go and I can vote for them. Whereas the left will just stand in the middle of the street shouting, we don't know what we want and we want it now. And we'll lose all respectability, and people who are involved will lose all their enthusiasm before we will get to stage 2.
This is representative democracy, and we are horizontal, we are not representative. The power is in between all of us. Maybe it's difficult to understand because we have the idea that we need someone to drive us, no? To drive us to take decisions, to drive us to do things, and it's difficult to understand that by yourself, you can do things in different sorts, in different things. But the problem is maybe in the system that you are living, you don't fit, you don't know where to fit yourself. For me, the idea of being governing is the day where I see that the decisions are taken in this way and not in a hierarchical way.
And do you educate people understanding the basis of the crisis and the curtains of the crisis? Because they truly don't understand IMF, World Bank, they don't understand any of this. And the economy, the free market, it's free for only few people. It's not free like we understand. And when you try to talk to professors, they don't want to teach you. They don't want to teach you alternatives. Is it similar in your country?
Of course.
But do you have, okay, so why do you demand? Do you go to university? Do you show projections? Do you show the films? Do you organize because I think it has to start with really young people.
One woman in Catalonia Square in Barcelona said, a woman of 50 years old, that went to an assembly and she said, I was watching the problem of my life. I didn't know what was this austerity, banking, I don't know what the people were talking about. And I came and I was in my life watching this situation like the spectator that is watching a theater. Once I entered in the movement, I just passed to the backstage. I see how actors are acting, and now I can come back to the chairs of the spectator anymore. This is what happens with many people in Spain.
But where do we start with young people to get them educated, to get them open-minded? Not necessarily educated because they are educated, but open-minded and see the different, unfold the story. And this is where it gets. It's the truth. It's a history. It's something.
They are gonna do. Next generations, they are gonna do. This is something that I found when I went to the squares and I start to find new people. A lot of young people that they understand the democracy 4.0. They have these speeches, no? Democracy 4.0, and some of them, group of students from the university, went to the parliament to talk with politicians to say, hey, we have a really good formula for our democracy. We have the democracy 4.0. Look, with one program, everyone can participate in the decisions you take inside here, and the politicians were, wow, this is great. This is amazing. This facilitates a lot of our job. So, but what this mean? That I'm not gonna be useful here? Yes. No, I don't want this. We are just putting the truth, what is happening. Like if we were in the backstage and telling, hey, this is happening, this is happening. At the beginning, the government say, this is the group of hippies in the squares. But now all the prophecies are happening.
We have to grab to it. We have to change a little bit our thinking and educate, first of all. Educate and demand, the truth, because I don't think we're doing this enough.
There are two chances. Or you prepare, or you are going to explode. You can change, you can take whatever you think.